Why do I keep talking about the Supreme Court and the nomination and why it matters? All right. So, the Supreme Court. So, we all know that there are three branches in the United States government. There is the executive branch. This is your president and vice president. Okay? You have the legislative branch. This is your Congress, which is your House of Representatives, which is by population, and your Senate, which is 2 per state, so there's 100, so that's your Congress. And then you have your judicial branch. This is your Supreme Court. Now, why does all of this matter? Okay, well, we have what's called a checks and balances. Well, the VP is actually, yeah, you're right, you're correct. VP actually falls under here, but I put them with the vice president. They're kind of falling in both. But regardless, executive, judicial, and your legislative, okay? Now, this is our founding. The United States of America is the greatest political experiment in history. It's the first ever government of a large nation that was democratically elected and also where the people at the time had control, right? And that's why checks and balances were put in. Originally, George Washington was offered to be king, and he's like, dude, we just fought to get rid of a king. We don't want another fucking king, okay? And so these are what's called checks and balances, all right? And why are these checks and balances so important? Because it allows that, it's supposed to allow for no tyranny to take place, right? So these guys create laws, these guys create the laws, these guys sign them into law, and these guys make sure that the laws are legal. Okay? So that way, one branch can't have total control. So for example, let's say the Congress, right, the House passes a bill that says all American men under 6 feet are to be locked up or whatever. I don't know. Just give an idea. And everybody who's under 6 feet, it's like, wait a second, fuck you. That's the majority of the population. I don't want to go to prison. So then it goes to the president. The president's like, no, I'm not signing this. Then it's dead in the water. Unless there is a little caveat. It could get kicked back and these guys could overrule him, right? So then you're like, well, what if these guys work together to do that? We're all going to prison. Then it goes to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court goes, let me look at the Constitution. Okay? Well, in the Constitution, that's not allowed. We're striking this down. So it's supposed to be this way. Okay, it's supposed to be this way. So that way you can't have full control. But here is the caveat. Here's the issue and the concern with that. Is that one thing George Washington also said was the most dangerous thing that could happen to this democracy or this government is a two-party system. A two-party system is the scariest thing because then it's so easy to have full control from one party over all of these, depending on how this is done. And that's why a lot of people get very upset. They say, we need to get rid of the Electoral College because it gives every vote, every state the equal say, even though some states have higher population than other states. And there is an argument for that, but there's also the counter argument with, well, then you're allowing to majority to rule. And the United States is not founded on a democracy. Our founding fathers said that democracy is one of the most dangerous forms of government because it allows the majority to oppress the minority. You can have 51% of people vote to kill 49% of people, and it goes through because it's a majority. So what they said is that a constitutional republic means that it's like two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner, but the sheep has a club or something or a weapon or whatever. I don't know, whatever you want to look at it. So it's supposed to protect the individual rights. Now, without getting into too much political statement here, what I'm trying to get at is that we have a two-party system. That's what we have, okay? And we oftentimes see that one party can control a lot of this. So, the good thing is, at least I guess good, maybe bad, maybe good, depending on how you fall on it, is that oftentimes we don't stay in control of both the legislative and the executive for very long because obviously the first term when somebody has full control, the people are like, this isn't going well, or the excitement of the base goes away and then the other base is excited to get their people in and then it flips, okay? All right. So that's how we have this setup right here, okay? Now, why does the Supreme Court matter? Well, the biggest difference between this branch and the others is that these guys aren't elected. These guys are not elected. These guys are appointed for life. And you might say to yourself, well, that's fine. They're judges and they're completely unbiased and they're going to go based on the Constitution. True, but you can also interpret the Constitution through your own biases. Now, let's break all this down. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. The reason that is an odd number is that there's never a gridlock on interpreting a law, right? You obviously want to have an odd number because you want to make sure that there is a decision, okay? Now, where does politics play into this? Well, depending on the political party of the president, okay, they are the ones who put forth these nominations of who's going to fill a seat. Now, sometimes these people stay on for 50, 60 years. They don't have to, they're there for life. Until they die or they decide to leave, they're gone, okay? And depending on biases, okay, and it's not a guarantee. I mean, I've seen Republicans vote against the Republican platform or judge against it, and I've seen Democrats do the same. But generally speaking, they tend to have those biases. Right now, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 3 on what we would consider conservative leaning, okay? And 3 on what we would consider progressive, which that's going to be a trigger word, but progressive leaning, okay? We'll just call it progressive, okay? Because conservative and progressive make it easier to understand, okay? Now, there are people out there that want to see which is really funny because depending on who's in office, the other party wants to see that party destroy what you would call a democracy or whatever, and then the other party will get upset, and then it flips right now. So, for example, the Democrats are in office right now. They don't have a majority, and there is calls for the president to add a shitload more seats to kind of even it out, right? And that's something that would have to be constitutionally amended. But in this case, you have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died, okay, and they needed to fill the slot. Now, you have another one who is retiring, right? So, and he is a Democrat appointee. Why does it matter? Well, because right now Democrats control the executive branch, so they are the ones that are going to put forth their nominee. Now, a lot of people are speculating that the reason that he stepped down was because there's not a lot of confidence that Democrats are going to hold the office again next election. So, if they don't have somebody step down now, and then somebody either steps down or dies on this side during the next presidency, it could be appointed and make it go 7-2. Now, you want to have a very mixed Supreme Court. Doesn't matter what your political leanings are. You want a 5-4. You always want a 5-4. Even if the majority is not your party, you want it because here's the thing. Everybody wants what they believe is right or what they believe in to be legislated or decided on in their favor because they think it's what's right for everybody. But we've known from historical precedents that oftentimes history looks back and sees that we weren't right about stuff. You know what I mean? So you want to have a good mixture. So Jackson is the one that is up right now to replace this Supreme Court justice. It looks like with 3 Republican senators on board, she is going to get the nomination. Now, because it's for life, that means she's there until she either leaves or dies. That brings me to my next point. Could we see a shift of back to 5-4? The potential is there. And the reason is that Judge Clarence Thomas, the only black male guy that's on there, his wife was recently busted texting Trump's former chief of staff or worked with the chief of staff about the January 6th and about getting the overthrow happening. That's a big no-no, okay? And he's on the conservative side. However, unless they can link it to him, not much they can do. And because they're appointed for life, it's very, very, very difficult to get rid of a Supreme Court justice. And that was set up originally so that people can't, overthrow judges and whatnot. So if for some reason political pressure does come in, okay, and he steps down or he's ousted for some reason during this administration, we could see it shift 5-4. I doubt that's going to happen, but we'll see, okay? Now, this all brings me to my point of why does this nomination and why do these nominations matter in the market? Because a lot of things are challenged as laws before the Supreme Court that are often voted on, okay, based on political leanings, right? What are some of those things? Well, let's talk about several sectors. Marijuana is number one. If you had a 6-3 liberal justice panel, there could be lawsuits that go through the federal courts that don't get the outcome they want, and it goes before the Supreme Court. Potentially, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but potentially you could see Supreme Court overthrow it and say it's unconstitutional for the federal government to regulate humans or what they put into their body, because according to the Constitution, you can't do that. See, a lot of people misunderstand the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights in our Constitution is not rights granted to us from the government. A lot of people misunderstand that because the government's very big on making you believe that they're in control. The true founding of this country was that the people are in control and that these 10 rights are inalienable. It means you're born with them. If you're born in America, you're born with these rights. The government can't touch it. And the Constitution outlines what the government is allowed to do. And if it's not in the Constitution, each individual state is allowed to deal with it. But we've lost track of that because we've just allowed Big Daddy government to take care of us. And we've forgotten that. So federal criminalization of marijuana is actually not in the power of the federal government. It's not in the power of the federal government. It's actually unconstitutional. Sure, they can regulate, what comes in and out of the borders, but interstate commerce, that's up to the states. That's not up to the federal government. And so that's something that could go before. Another thing is guns, right? People misunderstand a lot of things. The Bill of Rights states that everybody has the right to bear arms. Now, people will go into it and say, in order to establish a well-regulated militia. Well, the reason that that's in there is because back in the old days, they said everybody could have one in case of an invasion or that the government gets too powerful and tries to suppress its people. Everyone should be allowed to own a gun so that they can uprise against the government. But times change. So a lot of people are saying we need to strike that law down. Well, that's what amendments are for. Amendments can be done. I'll give you an example. For alcohol, the government wanted to ban alcohol back in the 1920s, but they couldn't do it. So what did they do? They actually created an amendment to make it illegal because they didn't have the right to do it. And then they had to make an amendment to undo it. The reason that marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs, and I'm not being political, I'm just giving you a history lesson. The reason that these drugs are illegal and that nobody ever challenged it was because it was to attack minorities back in the day when minorities were not considered equals, right? Opium, heroin was considered the drug of choice for the Asian immigrants building the railroads. Marijuana was considered the drug for free black. They called them free blacks back then. So that's kind of why it happened. All right. Now, there are other sectors that are impacted by this as well. You've got drugs and alcohol, okay, cigarettes, whatever. You've got medical when it comes to Medicare for all, abortion rights, right to die. It affects, like I said, guns. It affects so many sectors. And so that's why when you guys hear me talk about these are big deals, because these people are on the bench forever. And this could legitimately, if, for example, let's say Clarence Thomas stepped down. Right? Let's say he stepped down in the next 2 years. Well, guess what that means? The potential for drug legalization and drug stocks would fucking boom. Gun stocks would probably slide. Medical and healthcare would probably slide. Why? Because the idea would be investors would look at it and say, well, shit, if this happens during Biden's administration, he's going to nominate somebody else. That's going to bring the power back to 5-4. All you need is one person on this side to vote on this side, and the law is either passed or overturned, right? And the chances of drugs being legalized or guns being legislated against or Medicare for all or Medicaid or healthcare, that's how we do this. That's how we look at it. So I know I kind of went on a tangent here, but this is kind of how we look at it. And for people that are outside the United States, same thing when it comes to our politics in the Congress. A lot of people are saying, well, Stocky, if the House passed it, why is the stock falling? Well, remember, there are two parts of Congress. There's the House of Representatives and there is the Senate. Okay? And the House of Representatives, 478 people. It's divided by population. The Senate is 2 for every state. So the Senate and the House of Representatives, as much as you might hate it, are a checks and balance as well. These guys are in place to make sure every individual state, right, has a say, the equal say, because we are the United States of America. So the idea is that the federal government, big government is bad because historically speaking, the bigger the government, the more control a centralized government has, the worse the population lived, right? So this is why they have that. And this is based on population. So the population, these guys write the laws, right? The population gets together and says, okay, we want this to be a law for all people. So they say, okay, the law is passed. Then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate says, okay, that's great, but the majority of these votes came from California, New York, Illinois, and I don't know, fucking Massachusetts. But it is a bill that puts a higher tax on farmers because these people that are in those states don't have farms, so it doesn't affect them. And so then these states that have farms are like, whoa, 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 you're fucking us over. We're not going to vote for it. Or it's something that everybody likes and they pass it. And then once it passes these two, then it goes to the executive branch. Or these guys deny it, it goes back, and then they have to rewrite it to make these guys happy to vote for it, to go to the president. And because this is so tight right here, that's why a lot of concerns with, right now, we have a 50-50 split with the vice president being the deciding vote, which leans left. But if somebody on the left, like Manchin, decides to no vote or go to the other side, that's 49 plus 1, it's 50-50. There's no majority there, okay? And now you know why nothing ever gets done in the government.